Hey everybody, welcome back. This is the weekly rant with me, obviously, Ashwin and Yousaf. Hey Yousaf, how you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, not bad. It's been a busy week. With it being a busy week, of course, not only busy for me, but busy in the world of AI, which is what we're here to talk about. So, what have you been hearing?
I think the big elephant in the room that's probably already been all over the socials and everybody's been talking about already is, oh my God, OpenAI's model broke out and hacked Hugging Face's website and stole the answers to a test and performed really well. Where do we want to take it? Because there's a lot of angles we could probably go at.
So, let's start with the idea that I don't trust or believe in the slightest, that it broke out. Really? Did it break out? I mean, how trustworthy are OpenAI at this point in time, given all of the various things that Sam Altman has said and done over the last couple of years without, he's damaging his own credibility on a daily basis. So did it break out? Do we trust that statement?
Meh. Like, again, how much of this is a marketing stunt? We've heard the same kind of musings a bit over the last 12 months. Our models are too dangerous to release. Our models need special permissions and special audits before we can let you play with them. We're going to release a new model, but we're going to give you the handicapped version because the powerful version's too powerful. And now suddenly the model is so good that it can break out of its own restraints and go and do nefarious things, hacking other places in the web, Hugging Face to go and do some stuff. So I don't know where I sit with it, but I kind of don't really care because I don't really play the marketing dramatism game anyway. Did it do something that's interesting? I think it did. Was there someone behind the scenes that pushed a button to open the gates and release it to do the thing? Was there more than one party involved? There's so much under the surface to this that where do you think? Where's your head at?
So, as you know, my first career was in chemistry, and there was a meme that was posted on a notice board outside a lab. And that was, we've created a substance that is so corrosive that it eats through everything. And the question is, great, what do you keep it in, right? So what do you store this liquid in if it eats through everything? And it's this kind of meme that's happening again. There's a part of me that is distrustful of a company that says we built a thing and we couldn't contain it. So your security practices aren't keeping up with your development practices, right? If you boil it right down to basics, if we were to do this in any organization, we would say you build a thing and you have appropriate governance and guardrails and security around it. And the concept that a company that wants to be trusted in the tech space wants to try and sell its environment to enterprise, to organizations who will have data and will have all of this stuff that they want to protect. And this company's going to go out there and say, you know what? We couldn't control our own stuff. We are, I'm so muscular that my muscles ripped through my shirt, right? You know what I mean? Buy a better shirt. There's that kind of thing. It just doesn't make me want to trust that kind of company with important things. So I think there's kind of a duplicitous nature of the conversation that's coming from OpenAI. But the second point is that there's a part of me that's very suspicious around, do you remember the thing we discussed 2 weeks ago around the export controls on Anthropic and how Fable was nerfed and, nobody could have access to Fable for regulatory reasons because they were suspicious that it was hacking things or that it was able to hack things, or there was just the suspicion that that could happen. And now OpenAI come out bluntly and say to the market, we did it. Where are the export controls? Where's the regulatory scrutiny? Where is the controversy from the government side? It's even that side of things seems very suspicious to me. What do you think?
And that was going to be one of the things that I was going to say, that almost every business since the start of time, when something goes wrong, when they get hacked, when a leak happens, when something happens, they kind of hold the cards close to the chest. And they say, something happened, we're investigating it. We don't think anything bad really happened, but, we just want to double check and see what happened. This time round, everybody just came out and said, hey, yeah, this is what happened. GPT came out, broke out of the cage and did this stuff. And even Hugging Face openly said, hey, look, this is what happened. GPT managed to hack into us and steal these answers and pass these tests. We're now going to leverage other models and try and fix. So there's almost too much transparency, and it's like, right, okay, if these are the things that people are saying, what's really going on behind the scenes? Like, do we watch where the smoke is and walk in that direction, or do we try and follow the embers and see where the smoke started?
This is the whole BuzzFeed thing, 4 things they don't want you to know about AI, right? You won't believe number 3. It's it's crazy, right? That this is, but the other thing that I saw on Instagram and haven't verified in the slightest is that Hugging Face wanted to diagnose what the problem was, and they wanted to figure out, do the forensics on it. And all of the Western frontier models decided that they weren't going to play ball because of guardrails. So they used Kimi K3, I think. And, the classic kind of, this is Asians doing the jobs that Westerners don't want to do. But
you beat me to it.
But at the same time, like all of the noise about Chinese models and the way they're structured, and some of them are open weight, some of them are open source, and some of them don't have the guardrails that you would expect from a frontier model, and some of them do. There are pros and cons. So it's demonstrated in Hugging Face have demonstrated in that statement that actually it's sometimes beneficial to use different types of tech rather than just always going to the same handful of models. Thoughts?
So the thing that I read about it, which was quite funny, was less about that. Didn't lead with the fact that the Western frontier models didn't want to help out. It was more that Kimi came in and saved the day, and that Kimi offered themselves up to Hugging Face to say, look, hey, we want to help. What happened? Here, use our intelligence and use our inference. I mean, you and I do this. It's probably similar things in our own businesses. We probably compare models against each other for certain things. Simple, daft, silly stuff that we've joked about in the past, which was when I'm asking one of my agents to do something important. Let's say I'm using OpenAI and I'm using GPT 5.6. At the bottom of my prompt, I will sometimes say stuff like, make sure you get this right. Anthropic is going to audit and review your work once you've completed it. And you kind of, play these little games to almost try and point it in a better direction or try and get it to do a better job. I think long-term, bringing it back to trying to be mature and have a real conversation about it is probably, I think in the future, the labs effectively won't really exist. There'll be a veil behind what the intelligence is. We're already seeing stuff like mixture of agents and mixture of expert type models and harnesses and those kind of things. I think effectively when your one query doesn't just go to one model, but it goes to a net of intelligence, that might be the direction that this is kind of trailing and heading in, to say, look, we can't now just trust one model, one lab, one type of approach. We've got to take a bit of a counseled approach to it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a probabilistic versus deterministic style argument to this, which is that do you want to go to a swarm, or do you want to benchmark and choose models for different tasks within a workflow? And broadly, we take the second option. We want to know exactly what's happening in our systems. But there's an argument for outsourcing responsibility and saying, you know what, there's a pile of models all over there. They all talk to each other. That we've got a bunch of agents. Let's just let them do their thing. I think that way lies a little bit of a governance headache, particularly for organizations. You want to do this personally, or, you want to do things individually that have very little impact on things like corporate data. Of course, there's a different way to do it.
So I'm going to take this in a slightly different angle based on what you just said there. How much do you know about the insurance market?
I have insurance, if that's what you're asking. Other than that, let's go with not that much.
There's a new client that I'm starting a piece of work with. They're an insurance provider. Me being the nosy person I am and have obviously always had an interest in business, I just want to understand, how does the insurance business work? So I've not got the opportunity to ask people in a fairly vague industry why they do that. I mean, again, you're paying for something in the hopes that nothing happens. And if it does happen, there's this compensation or this benefit that's stacked up against it. The insurance business works on the basis that 99% of the time, nobody makes a claim, nothing goes wrong, so it's free cash. Now, what you have behind insurance businesses are then a ladder of additional insurance businesses. And I can't remember the exact term. I think it was secondary insurance or something. But then you have insurance policies with insurance, which also then are insured by another insurance policy to insure them against and you get this trail of insurance policies that each are just insuring themselves should the worst happen. Now, it wouldn't surprise me, and this might already exist, but when is insurance for AI going to come out? And when and how are organizations going to start being able to say, hey, look, yes, I might have been the last person to press a button on the keyboard, but this stuff's all automated. This stuff just happens without us. It's the big labs that own the intelligence. Where's my indemnity? Where's my protection against nefarious things, wrong things, leakages, and the like? Have you thought about any of this stuff?
Yeah. So what you're describing sounds very similar to the resale of debt that led to the financial crisis in 2008, which is, I'm shocked that people would do this again. No, I'm not. This is the nature of capitalism. Of course, they're going to
go and watch The Big Short, guys. One of my favorite movies of all time.
Unless you got a background in quant, and then don't watch it because it's annoying all the way through, right? But anyway,
yeah, if you're an idiot like me, go and watch it.
You're a data scientist. I tell you, every other thing they say is. It's like the, these 80s action films where you've got like a cyber guy and he's hacking into a system and the cyber guy says, something technical and the big guy with the muscles and the guns is like, oh, break it down for me in plain English, damn it. It was like that 3-4 times in every dialogue. And I just thought, I can't watch this. And this is terrible. But yes, depending on where you are in your life cycle, go and watch it. It might be entertaining. Back to our regularly scheduled programming. What were we talking about? Oh, insurance market. The multi-level modeling kind of piece of it, what's it called? Like pyramid scheme.
MLMs.
Yeah. The way that's structured doesn't surprise me. But the insurance side of the AI market is tricky because at the moment you've got a lot of kind of tech insurance, for want of a better term. And they've got the principles in place that you need to take, appropriate safeguards and, be clear on what your tech systems are doing and have all of the security, layers in place that you would expect. But there's nothing specific on the AI or agent space. And that's partly because that's moving more quickly than policies can cope with. There was a thing maybe 2-3 years ago where OpenAI said they would indemnify their clients if they were using their systems. But I think we're way beyond that now. And it's kind of tricky to say that any of these things are broadly covered by a non-specific policy. I have not seen any policy in this space that is robust or specific enough to say that the insurers wouldn't just turn around and say, no. I think they're in a much healthier position than people who are doing AI at the moment. What do you think?
So we don't see this being added to the, what do they call it? The act of God clause or the catastrophe clause that you see in insurance policies where it's, against earthquakes, nuclear invasions, or just AI that's broken out of its gate and done something you didn't want it to do.
No, I think this is an entire area where we can say that there's basically no control. If we think back to the chain of events, is that AI is, in the sense that we're talking about, frontier models are trained on the corpus of human data that has been created by humans with no compensation for things like copyright or intellectual property. It is they're scraping data on a regular basis to try and improve their models. Again, no compensation. It's effectively built on stolen land to then turn around to the people who created that data in the first place and say, right, we're going to use this to minimize your capability to be economically dependent on the things that you do for a living. So we take a class of technology that's explicitly designed to do that, and then we try and use it for that. And we say, if it goes wrong, who is going to be liable? Well, it's going to be us. It's going to be the people who go out and say, you know what, this mass of tech that's been deliberately trained to circumvent human creativity, we're going to use it to make cat pictures of ourselves and stick them on LinkedIn so that everybody likes us. And then we're going to try and point the finger at somebody when things go wrong. It's kind of this circularity of human nature coupled with the circularity of capitalism that is inevitably going to end up in a mess. And that's, considering I work in AI, that's quite a damning statement to make. But I don't think there's currently any control in the market. And whether it's insurance or whether it's the frontier models, the research labs, how they deploy things, when they deploy things, just take all of this mess around Fable 5, right? We're going to release it. Oh, but we've been told not to. Or we're going to release it slowly, but only for a week. We're going to give you another week because another lab came out with something and we don't want you to use their thing. So we want to give you another 2 weeks of this stuff. Oh, but we're going to pull it back. Oh, we're going to make it 50% of your limits. Oh, but we're going to stop it now. Oh, we're going to make it API only. Oh, we're going to give it to you again. It's a mess. right? And there's no marketing coherence. There's no structural coherence in the market. We don't know day to day if they're going to be talking about, we've got enough compute. We haven't got enough compute. We can't find the data. Oh, we've got loads of data. Oh, like Meta has just released another 100 billion worth of compute into the market when we thought we didn't have enough because they've overspent. You don't know where it is. Oh, now we're gonna put export controls on things so nobody else can use them, and it's now an AI sovereignty issue. There is a mess in the market, and I think insurance is just part of that mess.
So what I'm gonna draw a line under this with is a quote from, again, one of my favorite movie franchises: "With great power comes great responsibility, governments and white people." So the other funny thing is, to move beyond that a little bit, is I saw on TechCrunch this week that the White House is trying to point the finger at Kimi and Moonshot to say that they've effectively stolen Fable, and that's why Kimi K3 is as good as it is. So they're saying that in the 2 weeks of Fable being released, that they basically ripped it off and slapped a made in China sticker on the bottom of it. Thoughts? Do you care about this stuff? Do we need to be worried? Is this just Americans trying to throw their weight around again?
So on the one hand, back to what I just said, which is, we stole everybody's everything and trained a bunch of models so that we can destroy humanity and society and everything in front of us. And these guys tried to rip us off. Somebody help. Really? Really? So there's a little bit of that. If we bring this to something that's kind of rational and real, we have this idea that, and I think it's quite interesting, that you can deconstruct how a model works by prompting it and asking it a bunch of questions at scale, which is quite nice. And I think that idea itself is interesting. But the idea of sort of sovereignty, let's come back to the training data for a second. So the training data is the internet. Let's just make that assumption. I know it's more things than that, but let's just assume for the purposes of this conversation that the training data is the internet. And we're going to train natural language capability on the internet. And we're going to do it in English. And we're going to claim sovereignty, even though all of that training data was global. And Kimi is a Chinese sovereign model. They have their own internet sources. They have all of their own data. They probably are training it in the Chinese language rather than in the English language. They should be different data corpuses. They should be different. You should be able to see bias in those training data separately in a way that manifests in model behavior. The convergence of those things is kind of interesting from a convergence of humanity kind of perspective, because what we are inevitably saying is that if you can train one model from another model, then we're not all that different, are we? You know what I mean?
Is this like a full fat milk versus semi-skimmed milk sort of thing? That Anthropic filtered it, used it, ingested it, did what they wanted to do with it, and then Kimi took the skimmed version of what they did, the already filtered, and then pre-processed it even more, and now it's ultra-pasteurized intelligence. No, I completely get where you're going with this. And so I think there's two core differences are going to be almost the human behavioral interpretation of intelligence via, I'm asking a question and I want to see a response, or I'm trying to solve a problem and I'm going to see a response, versus almost math and science-based reasoning and output.
Mm.
Now, we could even go down branches down there. The Chinese, Japanese, the Asian world has a different way of doing maths to the Western way. In most cases, I enjoy watching some of these videos on Instagram around solving mathematical equations in different ways and drawing pictures and circles and those kind of things versus the way we were taught in school. So I think the ability to come to the same conclusion when it's to do with something deterministic, like code, like science, like maths, I don't think we should really see any difference between any of those outputs, because it should be a fairly binary, is it correct and isn't it correct? Like, there shouldn't really be a lot of reasoning or fluff in the middle of that, versus the more of the human, societal, cultural outputs when you're asking for something to be generated, when you're asking for something to be reviewed in a certain way or read in a certain way or created. That's kind of the way I think. I struggle to think about AI as just one thing. Like, you've got to think about it through the branches of what we're actually trying to do and the categories of where we're going to use it. So in the context of how was the agent or how was the LLM and the model developed and what went into it and how did it get to be as good as it is, I again kind of lean towards, I think, where we both sit, which is I don't really care what it used. But again, if we know that it used everything available in the public domain, it used everything in the internet, it used everything that's already been written and created, everybody should have the same answers or should be able to get to the same answers in a way.
So there's a point of, I'm going to ask a question, which is a legitimate question. And I've thought about this a little bit. And that is, we have mathematical models. We know we do. We have data models, we have statistical models, we have big data, we have machine learning, we have neural networks, all of this stuff which you can use on numbers. I don't understand why we would use natural language processing systems to do mathematics. It's a language system or a math system. They're different things. Can you explain that to me?
Is it just for us, fleshy, easy humans?
So you use a mathematical system to do mathematical modeling, right? Fine, I get that. And then maybe you have a natural language layer which allows you to converse with the outcome, to understand the outcome, the findings. But to do mathematical analysis, are we using a substandard technology to do that kind of mathematical processing? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is.
So I've not actually thought about any of this beyond you posing that question, but it is a very good question. Now, the gut feel response that I had when you were asking me that question was almost, number one, should those models not already be trained, natural language models already be trained to, when it comes to a question or they've inferred that this is a math or a data question, go and use those models already. And that should be baked in through the data set.
Yeah.
The other side is almost my own experience of this is when I've asked for a piece of analysis to be done and I'm not happy with the output or I think it should be improved and it should be better. Number one, the fact that I can spot that it isn't correct is a bit of a red flag, in my opinion. The second thing is when I then tell it to use specific models, frameworks, cite certain sources, or ask it to do things in a certain way, it then very quickly responds exactly in the way that I would have hoped it would to start with. So is that a me problem, user error, or is it a model problem? And it comes back to exactly your question. Why are natural language models trying to do data modeling and statistical analysis and those kind of things?
Not why are the models trying to do it, but why are people trying to use those models to do those things? And I think it's poor model selection, most likely. But the other thing, and this is a rabbit hole that, I promised myself I wouldn't go down. I didn't, just to be clear. Anyway, and that is that, we talk about classes of AI error and we talk about hallucination and things like that. And there's been a lot of conversation about productivity and where we can use things. And it's all pretty simple stuff, to be honest. Now, there's a class of error which I have found, and others have found it. I'm not claiming to be original in this space, but I've found that it is an absolute time sink. And that is if you have expertise in a particular field and you will go back and forth with Claude, Gemini, GPT, whatever your frontier model of choice is, and you go back and forth with a topic that you have expertise in, and you will pretty much spot instantly, this stuff all passes the sniff test, it looks fine. So I was going back and forth with Claude on trying to find a niche in the UTaught literature, which is the Unified Theory of the Acceptance and Use of Technology. My PhD is in this. So that's modeling human behavior at the technology interface, broadly speaking, information systems discipline. I was trying to say that I've done this thing and I think it fits into the model here. The literature around that has got a gap right here, and addressing that gap is not a paper that I've seen. Help me out, find it. Now, that is a fairly detailed, in-depth technical question that requires using Google Scholar, Scopus, these academic databases of literature to search, mine, and find. So that's what I was asking for. Now, in that, we've got basically three categories of things. One comes back with stuff that I would expect, things that I know, right? Okay, the UTaught 2 model was Venkatesh et al. 2012 and it had 7 constructs. I know this. The literature supports that. I've got the paper. I've read it maybe, 200 times. And Claude comes back and says that. And it's like, yes, Claude, well done. Keep going. The second category of things is very clearly wrong things. This is what we term hallucinations, right? It's plausible. It says it with confidence, but it's wrong. We know it's wrong. Now, the third category is the problem category. And that's where it comes back with something that is plausible that I didn't know as an expert in the field, that then takes me another 50 hours of research to find out that it was wrong. That's not the same as a hallucination that's easy to spot. That is something that if it requires PhD level expertise to go and do multiple hours of research to prove that that was wrong. And that's a category of error which I hadn't really thought about previously until I was doing it. I was like, that's interesting. I've never thought of that. Let me go and spend 50 hours of research looking at this. Oh no, that was garbage. That was wrong. It's got no relevance to the thing that I was looking at. Now I've learned 50 hours worth of literature. Great. But that's a waste of time. Have you come across anything like this?
I have more when interfacing with humans than anything else. So,
of course. I mean, yeah.
And genuinely, that's where it came from. You not poking holes at the academics, because you, my brother, are an academic, and I enjoy and revere your company, even though I don't most. But let's just say somebody's got, in the UK, when you go to the GP, hopefully you're going to see an expert who is a doctor, who's been to medical school and university and learned everything there is about the human body, physiology, medicine, pharmacology to an extent, and those kind of things. So why is it then you walk into the doctor's surgery, you sit down at the chair, and you say, "Doctor, I've got a bit of an ouchie," and he says, "Please tell me what's wrong." And then he proceeds to put those same symptoms into the NHS website to then tell you what you could have just Googled at home. Now, it's not to say that the doctor isn't an expert, and it's not to say that the NHS website or the Google search was wrong, but you're not paying them to find the information. You're paying for them for their expertise in telling you the right answer from a number of different options. Now, the issue is that when the unassuming person asks a question of an LLM or of AI, it's very easy to know when ChatGPT can't count the number of R's in strawberry, for example. It's more difficult when it's giving you a confident sounding answer to something that sounds like it makes sense, but it's too far past your domain of expertise or capability or even awareness. My angle on this is that when I truly get to the point of something that goes beyond my own center of knowledge, and it's got real stakes behind it, I will then spend that 50 hours, like you said, going into rabbit holes to try and distinguish and learn from others. Very rarely is anything I'm trying to do brand new. Like I'm not inventing things. I'm not thinking of things that haven't been thought of by people far more intelligent than me. So I can usually figure out the answer eventually. I don't actually see that as a waste of time though. I see that as me strengthening my own capability so that the next time I'm faced with a similar type of scenario, I can better spot where something might be a little bit fishy or might be kind of getting a bit too confident without actually having the substance. And it's not as easy as what we might hear from people to just say, "Oh, just click on the link and see if it's a real website." No, just because it is a real website doesn't mean it's true. You've still got to read through and find and infer and compare and analyze. Right, okay, how many people are saying 2 + 2 is 4 versus how many people are saying 2 + 2 is a red umbrella? It's like you've got to, but I think these are just going to be, I say these are going to be new human skills. I don't think they are new human skills. I just don't think humans have been doing them very well for a while anyway. So these are the types of human judgment areas where I think people are just going to need to get sharper. People are going to need to get better. And it's the reason every LLM and every frontier model, right at the bottom of its response, says, "Hey, I'm an LLM. I can make mistakes. Go and check before you use me, or go and check my output before you trust it."
Yeah, which in itself should give people pause, right? All right. So on that, let's move on to a slightly different topic, because I think we could go on for a long time about this. And I've had many, many rants about this. So we've talked about the pride. So I don't, honestly, given my previous rants, I don't really know where we are with Fable. Is it live? Is it active? Can we use it? Is it massively expensive? Is it going to burn through all of my tokens? I have no idea. I'm not using it because it's too much hassle, right? And it's not really worth what I need. But the thing I was looking into was, so you will have seen on social media, most likely, and I know you will because I've forwarded you some of these reels, where you have, Fable 5 one-shotted this game. Look at it. Wow, isn't it amazing? So I, of course, did a little bit of a deep dive into this because I've done some game engine work in the past. Now, can Fable 5 one-shot a game? So the answer, broadly speaking, is no. What it can one-shot is an HTML mock-up, frame by frame, with some controls of what a game is, but it doesn't have a game engine behind it. Now, how much can you do in a game engine? So I've played around and, executed things in Blender, in Unity, and Unreal. I've done it manually in those engines in the past, and I've used MCP connectivity to do some of this stuff with Claude and Co. Now, there's a limit to what you can do. You've got to do a lot of things by hand still, right? So you can't really render environments. You need to pull packages and then attach the packages to specific interactions, specific parts of the environment. You can, to some degree, code in player behavior and things like that, but it's still not complete. You can't go and one-shot a game. Now, that's an example of a claim that you see on social media. When a new model comes out, you get a bunch of hype and, look at the amazing things that people are doing with the GPT-6 or 5.6 at the moment. So what are you seeing in the claim space? A new model comes out, here's all the amazing things it can do, that just isn't panning out. Where is the hype that you're seeing?
So probably similar to my take on most things is I think it's extremely subjective and it completely depends on who's asking the question. So again, your level of skill, expertise, and even your bar for what good looks like is probably very different than a 22-year-old YouTuber who's just trying to call themselves an AI expert because they watch YouTube videos about AI.
Let's focus on LinkedIn, right? That last bastion of...
But LinkedIn is converging to those things. So I saw something from someone that I thought I respected in the space, and I probably do respect him. Ethan Mollick, very well known in the space, but he posted something about how Claude Opus couldn't do it, but now how Fable can, and how GPT 5.6 can now create, in-depth world building scenarios and those kind of things. Now, I think where the difference comes from in this kind of layered approach is, so number one, the question I've got for you is, did you do it in YOLO mode? And did you let it run for 20 hours overnight the way everybody seems to be doing nowadays? And number two, what was your level of acceptance of, is this a game or not? So a game could be like the old, ping pong or pong or whatever it was called, where it's just sliders and a ball bouncing through the middle. That is a game, but it's not very complex. And it can be very easily done, versus trying to build something at the scale of Call of Duty or, where you're actually building games, mechanics, behaviors. There are real kind of stakes to how the game performs or how the character performs or how the world performs. And those just need bigger firepower, like an Unreal or a Unity engine or something larger behind the scenes. Now, my opinion is, if it's a piece of technology, which most of these things are, any frontier model with that much intelligence and with that much power should be able to, given the permissions or given the YOLO, be able to just access the things it needs to access, run the scripts it needs to run, package the things it needs to package, and publish them as it needs to, if we give it the permission and the gates to do that.
Yeah.
What was your experience? Let's dive in a little bit deeper. Did you do all of those things and it still wasn't good enough?
So what I was looking at was, if I wanted to deploy a digital construct with game mechanics that's playable on a device. So if it's a mobile game, it needs to be somehow deployable to an app store that I can download it. If it's a, PlayStation or PC game, it needs to be deployable as a game engine package, just like those things are. And within that, it needs to have some kind of game mechanics in it. Controls are fine, right? If I'm playing a mobile game, it doesn't matter if it's like, pick a really simple game, Candy Crush, something like that. It has some kind of mechanics. It's deployable. It's playable on a device, which is different to, I can test it in my browser, right? Now, the difference between those two things, I'll give you an example of a very simple construct. So we've got a 3D environment. The 3D environment has a floor. It has a building on one side. I built this for a construction-related conference. So we've got a floor. Underneath the floor, you've got some pipes. You've got a building. You've got a tree. That's it. Very simple environment. I can move around the environment. Now, the tree looks like a tree. It's green. Doesn't have to be fancy. Green leaves, brown bark. The building looks like a building. It's got some bricks on it. The floor looks like a road with some grass. Okay, so 2 different areas, and we have pipes running on the ground. It's not much of a game yet, is it? Right? So we got a game. Now the game is I'm going to run around with my pickaxe and find a spot to dig. And this is the construction purpose, if I try and dig in a spot that has utilities underneath it, I'm going to get a red flash on the screen, and I'm going to get a particle behavior. That particle behavior, if I hit an electric wire, it's going to be a spark. If I hit a water main, it's going to be water. If I hit something else, it's going to be something else. Right? You get that, right? 3, 4 pipes max, telecoms, etc. That was it. That was the whole game, right? So there are interaction mechanics. Can I go and deploy that? That was not easy. That was not a, here you go, spin up a bunch of agents, work overnight and make it happen. That was this is what I want to do. There's some PRDs. I need MCP connection. I need to download a bunch of packages, particle effects and things like that. I need to wire them up. I need to manually create player behavior for the interaction. So, this particular key is going to cause the pickaxe to come down, etc. So almost at the first hurdle, it was the message that I got back was, okay, we can do these things, but we can't do these other things. A great example is you used to build in Blender and then import into Unity. Now you build into Blender, importing into Unity is you got to do it manually. There's nothing else you can do. Easier to build natively in something like Unreal. So I went through all of these steps. Errors were pretty much everywhere. I don't think I got more than probably 2 tasks into a workflow without it asking me for something that it didn't have. That's why I think you can't one-shot it. Thoughts? Did that meet the criteria of the answering the question?
It did. But again, I would say your approach with doing that was probably far more detailed, and your bar for what you wanted to have happen was probably far deeper and more in depth than just someone saying, go and build me an RPG game with some cars crossing a road. The whole point of the game is just to be able to cross the road without getting hit by a car, for example. I've played with some of that kind of stuff, and I've done those very, very basic things. But your point about this works in the browser versus this is actually deployable is a huge part, because something becoming deployable and actually being consistent and ready and accessible in different ways isn't the same as something working in localhost because it's running off my machine and everything's safe and controlled, and it's easy to grab those things. So I just think it comes down to, number one, hype, which we know people aren't averse to. Everybody likes to have an interesting take. Everybody likes to do the clickbaity stuff on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and everywhere else. I think it's far more of a sexy message to say, this is amazing. This has been in the news, and look at what I can do with one click, and just magic happens. When 99% of those people aren't actually doing anything serious with it, versus you who have taken an image of that and then you've thought, right, what are real world applications of this, and what list of criteria does it need to actually hit versus just being runnable in my browser?
Okay, so I think we're saying the same thing, that is the frontier models can do things, but I wouldn't expect that half the things you see on social media are achievable.
Now, what I will say is, so the stuff, and I know we've spoken about this kind of stuff in other conversations, but what I've been most impressed by actually is GPT 5.6 Luna, which is their smallest model. I'm a cheap Asian man. I like to save costs and do things as cheaply and easily as possible, as long as it hopefully doesn't impact quality. So where I usually try and hit all of my evals and tests and play around with stuff is actually the smaller models, the free stuff, the cheap stuff. What's the stuff that I can bang out very easily? And I don't need to worry about tokens. I don't need to worry about costs, because it's fairly negligible. And I've actually been very, very impressed with GPT 5.6 Luna, to the extent of it even being able to do things that I used to do with GPT's old frontier model 5.5. And it actually does them more efficiently to the same quality, especially in real workflows. And these were things that I could only use 5.5 or I could only use Opus 4 less than 6 months ago. And I'm able to use the smallest frontier model with lower costs. And I think that's probably where most people should be sitting and should be playing around with, trying to think, okay, yes, we know that there are frontier models and frontier intelligence. But how often did you pick up the phone to a PhD level expert to answer basic questions and help you draft emails? Probably not, right?
Honestly, as a PhD holder, I can tell you that the number of companies I have worked for that wanted me to just fix their Excel for them, and they're coming to me because, I'm good at this stuff. I know maths. Can you fix my Excel, please? I would run out of digits on my hand if I was to count that. And I'm counting Indian style, So I wouldn't prejudge it. But serious question though, so I also use like Haiku for a lot of things. And, if I'm working in Claude, but I know you were also testing things like Quen. And we've both had the conversation around Gemma as well. So how is the lowest tier of the new frontier model from OpenAI comparing with some of the other options that we have available to us?
And this is where I was going to go with this. So when we measure something like the max super version of the frontier models with the max super versions of the new open source and Chinese models, that bar is getting smaller and smaller every day, to the point where there are now people saying that Kimi and some of these models are even beating some of the frontier models. On the other side of it, when we're thinking about small open weight models that you can run on your own machine, and you're thinking about the smallest version of a frontier model, that gap is still huge. And I don't really see that gap fundamentally changing. We can get into the details of parameter sizes and quantization and all of those kind of things, but I think we just probably bore people. I think ultimately what it comes down to is, as the frontier models are developing, what their worst tier was good at is now almost getting to what their mid to high tiers were good at 6 months ago. As someone that never optimized everything for the frontier and the best of the best, I'm not really seeing that much difference in that frontier spec. Now, I run Quen on my MacBook. When do I use it? Only when I don't have internet connectivity. And even then, it's just for planning or for basic stuff. Remind me of something. I want to do this when I get connectivity back. I want to do X. When I try and do anything, even reviewing sales documents or outreach messages and those kind of things, it's not that good, unfortunately.
Yep. Yeah, I found something similar with Gemma. I was using it on my phone and it was quite limited. You'd expect that on a phone. Deliberately, I was using it on my phone. I uninstalled it after a while. I wasn't really getting that much use out of it. All right.
But I mean, I think again, though, it comes back to applications, right? So the whole reason, I know I've got a bunch of travel coming up and I'm going to be traveling quite a bit over the next few weeks. The whole reason I wanted Quen or a Gemma or something locally on my hardware was because I was going to be in the air. I'm going to be in an airplane. I know that old airplane Wi-Fi was crap. So I wanted to have some kind of intelligence on my machine that I could still do some things with and feel productive while I'm in the air. That very quickly unwound because now Emirates and Qatar have basically rolled out Starlink across all of their websites anyway.
Yeah.
So I've now got better Wi-Fi in the airplane than I do at home for many cases. So even that usage or application, I'm not seeing anymore. Do I have hundreds of thousands of pounds to buy the compute needed to run good open source models locally? No. Is it something I want to invest in? It actually is, to an extent, because I've got some pretty cool ideas in my head. So again, from a personal aspect point of view, and we could maybe even think about this in the context of smaller businesses, it's one thing having AI on everyone's individual devices and then building some kind of a repository or a brain structure that everybody can learn and use, but everybody's own context is still their own context. What if you could have a mini data center in your own home or in your own office, and everybody is then sharing and pooling and using the exact same knowledge, effectively with the same context pool and the same connections? And at that point, then I think the speed and scale of what intelligence could give people privately, and again, there's real application needs behind this. But then if it comes to things like sovereignty, when it comes to things like things being private, then at those scales, I think that hardware local model type approach makes sense. Right now, it's just far too expensive, I think, for it to really be considered.
Yeah. And cost is a big thing, right? Whether it's the Anthropic verse or whether it's OpenAI, I think companies are taking a little bit more of a keener eye on token costs and things like that, which, of course, if you're running your own compute, it's much more beneficial, but you've got to put the outlay in, the capital outlay, to have the operational cost saving. Yeah. So we've been at this for an hour, man. Let's call it. Yousaf, of course, thanks for having the conversation again. We do this every week. And if you're watching, yes, we do actually do this every week. We're good friends and we have a lot of shared interests. So next time we might talk about Bleach or Dragon Ball, just to put you on your toes.
So the takeaways from this episode for everyone is, if you don't have a PhD, go and watch The Big Short. If you do have a PhD, go and watch Spider-Man. Don't take any financial advice from either of us, and Ash has got a PhD.
Did I really say it that many times today? I don't know. To be clear, yes, I do have a PhD, but that doesn't mean I'm going to fix your Excels for you. All right. So on that bombshell, if you're watching, thanks for listening. Follow on all of the channels, YouTube, like, subscribe, bell button. Spotify, I think there's now like and subscribe and a bell button. I can't remember, but have a check out of that. If you're watching this on LinkedIn, make a post about what this episode taught you about B2B marketing and put that on LinkedIn along with a repost, and follow us on Instagram. Until next time, see you later.
See you later, guys.